Storms tore through Nebraska, Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana overnight. More rain is falling today in South Dakota and Missouri. The grain markets are trying to figure out exactly what it means for yield and price potential. We are taking a look at the impact on the commodity price downturn and getting an update on what many think is the demand that could turn markets around.
Live from Go the Other Way Tuesday via Farm Journal Studios, this is AgriTalk. This morning we'll begin with a conversation with Alan Hoskins from American Farm Mortgage. Then it's Chris Bliley from Growth Energy. Directly following the news, Karen Bonert from Farm Journal's Milk. I'm handsome newsman Davis Michelson. Now, say hello to the host of AgriTalk, Chip Flory.
Yeah, thank you so much, Davis. Welcome to AgriTalk. Man, oh man, those storms that rolled through yesterday afternoon and evening were really something to behold. Good grief. There were 100-mile-an-hour wind gusts in eastern Iowa yesterday, guys. 100 mile an hour. It's like a hurricane was rolling through the Midwest again, guys.
Yeah. Here in Kansas City, woke up to overcast skies, still horribly hot, and then for about a minute and a half, the wind blew like an escaped mental patient, and then stopped. And then the thunder rolled in, and now we're getting a nice, even, steady rain with a little bit of thunder. Yeah, just to make it exciting. A little thunder,
I will bet that the flora around the Michelson residence is just loving what's happening.
The leaves are
today.
unfurled. Yes, we're unfurled, fully unfurled here at the Institute today.
That's right, the Institute. Okay. We've got a beautiful day going on up here in Northeast Iowa. It's 73 degrees. We're heading for a high of 80 degrees today. It's going to be absolutely gorgeous. We've got a little more heat coming back in before things are really, really nice for this weekend. It's looking pretty good. I
like the sound of that. Really, really nice for this weekend. That's your forecast? I love that. Can we just stick with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
Man, there's a lot going on. The Republican National Convention is off and running.
Yep.
We've got the VP choice of former President Trump in his election campaign, J.D. Vance out of Ohio. There is a whole bunch going on. We got a lot of ground to cover. We're going to talk about some of the financial stress that is in the industry right now coming up in just a little bit with Alan Hoskins. And then let's talk demand and building our way out of it with Chris Bliley at the bottom of the hour.
Love it.
All right, let's get to it. What you got?
Well, let's start with the weather. Major to extreme heat risk continues for parts of the Mississippi Valley, Mid-Atlantic, and Northeast today. Additional heat concerns are increasing for the Pacific Northwest this week. Meanwhile, a cold front continues to track southward across the center of the nation. This will focus more showers and thunderstorms, some severe alongside excessive rainfall from the plains to the east coast. Hey, farm country, you know that when cold air meets hot air,
it happens.
Thunderstorm. Yep.
Yeah, and it was super hot yesterday afternoon when it started raining, and I mean that cold front just sucked the moisture out of the air. In about an hour and a half, we had over 2 inches of rain yesterday afternoon. Yeah, wow. It rained hard.
Well, Chip, the S&P 500 has surged over 18% this year, driven by investor enthusiasm for artificial intelligence and optimism about potential Fed interest rate cuts. We'll get to that. Analysts suggest that the possibility of Donald Trump's return to the White House could further boost the market. This phenomenon, dubbed the Trump trade, implies expectations of lower taxes, deregulation, increased oil drilling, and more fiscal spending under Trump 2.0.
Well, I hate to say it, but Jack Scoville from Price Futures Group was looking at the sharply lower corn, soybean, and wheat prices yesterday and calling that the Trump trade, too.
Ooh, all right, fair enough. Well, gold prices hit a 7-week high overnight on ideas of U.S. interest rates cuts coming soon. A Dow Jones Newswire headline today reads, quote, gold futures rise as banks bet on 2 U.S. interest rate cuts, end quote. Former President Trump has announced Ohio Senator J.D. Vance as his vice presidential running mate for the 2024 election. Since his successful 2022 Senate run with support from Trump, Vance has positioned himself as a new age populist conservative. I don't know what that means, Chip. Willing to challenge big business. He's introduced various legislation targeting the financial services industry, including a proposal with Massachusetts Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren to penalize executives of failed banks. Mr. Trump made a triumphant appearance at the Republican National Convention in Milwaukee to raucous applause on Monday, marking his first major appearance since surviving an assassination attempt just 2 days earlier. The former president entered the convention hall with a white bandage covering his right ear, a visible reminder of the recent attack. Well, Chip, President Biden will roll out a proposal to dramatically limit rent growth nationwide in the latest push by the White House to ease voter concerns about the skyrocketing cost of housing. The plan, which would cap rent increases, would require legislative action, unlikely to find support in the Republican-controlled House.
Yeah, we talked about that briefly on Friday. A 5% cap on a rent increase guarantees a 5% increase every year.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what it would do. That's how landowners would react to a rental cap rent controls. It rarely works.
Well, and finally here, Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell stated inflation and economic activity have slowed as expected, but did not indicate whether this would lead to lower interest rates at the upcoming policymakers meeting. During a Q&A session in D.C., Powell emphasized a meeting-by-meeting approach to decision-making, avoiding any specific signals about future rate changes. Dandy. Chip.
All right. Thank you very much, Davis. Let's bring in Karen Bonert, editor of Farm Journal's Milk. Good morning, Karen.
Hello, Chip.
Hey, county fairs happening all over the country. It's a special time of the year for a lot of the rural youth, isn't it?
It's fun. You talk about weather. I feel like when it's our county fair, the Rock Island County Fair in Illinois, it's either 100 degrees or we've got 4 inches of rain on the ground. Thankfully, that all came through yesterday and we fared okay. But yeah, the county fair is something special, right? It's at the time of the year where we get to celebrate all the hard work and just overall commitment that these young kids have, poured out into their livestock, whether it's through 4-H, FFA, or open shows. But, Chip, with the H1N1 outbreak, if you will, this is having an impact on the summer shows, including county fairs. The testing varies state to state, which includes, for many states, testing lactating cattle 7 days prior to the show. And so that is, it'll be interesting. I'm already seeing less cows, not just here, at other places too. It'll be interesting to see if that trend continues. But, despite all that, the kids are out here, my kids, including my daughter. This is her 15th year showing. She started when she was 3 years old. And it's just, I always also joke, dairy farmers work hard, right? Nonetheless. But when we spend our free time at a county fair working with cows. So are we passionate? Or are we crazy? I like to say a little bit of both, but
yes, absolutely. I think that's probably the case, Karen. Well, good luck down at the county fair. And Karen's always got some great perspective on what is happening in the dairy industry. Go to www.dairyherd.com. That's Karen Bonert, editor of Farm Journal's Milk. Okay, we've been talking about it quite a bit on the show, and in the afternoon show in particular, some of the financial stress that is being felt out there across the country. My big question is it farm stress or is it bank stress? We'll discuss next.
Do you suffer from talking on the radio phobia? No problem. Send us a tweet at #AgriTalk.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm your host, Chip Flory. Glad that you're with us on this Tuesday morning, July 16th, 2024. Last week, a couple of guest analysts in the afternoon really focused on how some operations are feeling the financial stress after we've seen the markets turn to the downside like they have. And yesterday, we extended the downside risk again in corn, soybeans, and wheat, getting a bit of it back today. Not enough, but getting a bit of it back today. And it triggered some thoughts about not only the financial well-being of operations, farming operations, but of rural banks and the banking system. I want to talk about it with Alan Hoskins, president of American Farm Mortgage and Financial Services. Alan joins us right now. Sir, it's good to talk with you again. How are you?
Doing well, Chip. Thank you for having me. I always enjoy being on.
You bet. Glad that you're here. Okay, the financial stress on farms. What are you seeing? What are you hearing? How are some of these farms exhibiting that financial stress out there, Alan?
Well, first of all, Chip, the operations that are looking at their numbers on accrual adjusted basis, they're becoming aware of the challenges candidly more quickly than the folks that are just focusing solely on cash basis profitability. So that would be the first thing that I would tell you, because obviously the difference in those two numbers can be significant when looking at the profitability of an operation. So those are the folks that are making the needed adjustments on a more timely manner.
Okay. Needed adjustments. What are some of those adjustments that can be made to promote some kind of a course correction here, Alan?
Well, certainly, Chip, looking at, and some of these are historic, some of them are things that they can still do today.
Okay.
Some of the historic things that we've seen, and by history, Chip, I mean over the past 6 to 9 months, looking at how they could go ahead potentially and get some debt locked in to give them flexibility if rates go down, but give them protection if rates go up, right, is one way that I would say. I would also tell you that there have been some operations that have either done a good job in looking at how they might be able to pare down some equipment that's not as needed as it might have been at one time, and using that as either a working capital supplement or debt reduction is another manner. Looking at their soil profiles and making good judicious adjustments as to fertility and how they can potentially save some money today but not cost themselves money in the long run would be 3 of the most prevalent things that I've seen.
Good stuff. Unfortunate stuff, but good perspective there, Alan. The way that the markets are performing, one thing that I've heard from some producers is, I might have lost a little bit of population because of the conditions that I planted into this spring. This market isn't doing me any favors. I'm not going to put another dime into the production or into costs here. That's a difficult decision to make, isn't it?
It is, Chip, but it's a lot easier decision to make if you're looking at it from a numerical perspective than it is an emotional perspective.
Yep.
And what I mean by that is making sure that they sit down and adjust their projections. Look at what those populations are in actuality. Look at what the yield potential is of this crop. Adjust the projections for the current year.
Yeah.
Look at what the cost of, if it's a fungicide application, look at what the cost of the fungicide application is and the possible payback on that. What I find, Chip, is folks are a lot more comfortable with the decision typically, and traditionally they make better decisions if they can see the potential ramification of that decision.
Yeah.
They make it a lot better than if it's just strictly an emotional decision because their population is down, or candidly they're just concerned about spending additional money on the crop because of where the markets are.
Yeah, great points. Okay. So, obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but there's talk in the state of Iowa that some banks are calling in loans early on Iowa operations. Have you heard any of that talk out there, Alan?
Chip, I have not heard any specific instances that I can personally identify, no.
Okay.
I will say, if you go back to 2008 with the economic meltdown,
Okay.
there were institutions that made decisions to not lend to certain industries, but also there were a lot of rumors during that period of time that didn't necessarily pan out. Now, Chip, please understand, I'm not sitting here saying there aren't potentially specific instances of what you're
Right.
saying is true, but I don't know of any personally.
Okay. When I hear that that maybe some loans are being called in early, obviously it raises concern about the financial well-being of those farming operations, but it also makes me question the financial stability of the banks that are calling in those loans, because if they weren't feeling the stress, they wouldn't be making such a move. What is the condition of the rural banking system right now, Alan? And I'm sure that the top there's huge differences between the top third, the middle third, and the bottom third producers, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I would say, Chip, obviously, banks, by their very nature, don't want to call loans because it doesn't do anything for the benefit of the profitability of the institution. And candidly, it does even less for the benefit of the customer.
Right.
However, there can be multiple reasons a bank might call a loan.
Okay.
It could be, Chip, the result of perhaps a discussion had been had with the borrower the last couple of years, that if performance wasn't meeting a certain threshold, that there was a possibility the loan could be called.
Mm-hmm.
Over my career, what I have seen is that a significant portion of the time on loans that I know that were personally called, there were communications with the borrower, usually multiple years ahead of time, about the need to improve the numbers to prevent that from occurring.
Okay.
So with each individual circumstance, there can be a different reason that the loan was called. And it's also worth noting whether it's an individual loan being called or an institution making an election to exit from a specific area of the lending marketplace.
Okay. Adjustments to the business plans. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes.
Okay.
There could be a multitude of reasons for that. Perhaps an institution got into the agricultural lending and realized at this point that perhaps the expertise of the folks that they have within that industry isn't sufficient to be able to navigate the current challenges.
Okay.
If that's the case, Chip, candidly, they're doing both the borrowers and the institution a favor,
right?
Because the borrowers need lenders that can work with them during challenging times.
Yeah.
That's an imperative. And as the number of bankers that were around in the 80s during the last go round continues to diminish because of retirements, candidly, there are fewer and fewer bankers that have seen long-term challenging times within the industry.
Yes. When we went through this in 2008, or went through the crisis in 2008, the level of experience of those rural bankers was still very much, we can remember what happened in the 80s. There were plenty around. That has changed. It will be interesting to see how we make our way through this. I've only got about 30 seconds left. We had 2 great years in a row, 22 and 23. 24 looks like it's going to stink. How do you make it not stink so bad?
Well, you understand that agriculture is playing the long game, not the short game. You look at how do you use your assets. If I'm a producer, how do I use my assets to most effectively work for me and keep a long-term focus, not a 2024 only focus?
Gotcha. Alan, perspective like that is it's invaluable. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate you making time for us again.
Thank you, Chip. Always enjoy being on. Thanks for asking.
All right. That is Alan Hoskins, president of American Farm Mortgage and financial services. We are going to be talking SAF next here on AgriTalk.
Time for Markets Now with the experts from Pro Farmer.
Joining us now, Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady. The grain markets tried to break down earlier, corn and soybeans included. They've come back. They are trading higher. Beej, what's going on? Just a bit of an upside recovery?
Absolutely, Chip. So obviously yesterday's trade was highly disappointing
Ugly.
for bulls and yeah, ugly. And we're getting a little bit of that back here at mid-morning, 3 to 4 cents higher in corn, 5 to 6 cents higher in soybeans. Meal market's a little bit firmer as well, as is soy oil. So those are all working to the upside, but we are seeing weakness in the wheat market being led lower by the HRW contract. So new contract lows there, and just more of the same in the wheat market with just a struggle to find buyer interest at the moment.
Yeah, the downside momentum is building in that wheat market. I was afraid that it was going to happen in the corn trade as well, but at least we're finding support at last Friday's low in that December corn. That's an important spot to watch, isn't it?
Absolutely. If you break down there, then you get more technical-based selling coming in. You probably get the funds adding to what is now a record short position in that market. And so all kinds of things at play. But for the moment, that support is holding.
All right. Very little action in the cattle complex, but we've got a solid rally happening in hogs. What's going on?
Yeah. So the cattle market tried to trade to the upside earlier and backed off some of that, and now somewhat of a mixed tone here at mid-morning. But like you said, quiet trade, not much going on in either live cattle or feeders at the moment. The hogs, a different story. So we had the July contract go off the board. The August contract assumed lead month status, and it finished yesterday. Roughly in line with the cash index, but boy, charging more than $2 higher at the moment and building some of that premium back.
Pro Farmer editor Brian Grady, Markets Now.
Opinions expressed on AgriTalk do not necessarily reflect the views of Farm Journal Broadcasting, affiliate stations, or sponsors. Knowledge is power. We're here to charge your batteries. AgriTalk.
Welcome back to AgriTalk. I'm Chip. Glad that you're with us. Scott Davis-Michelson with me here.
You betcha.
It's such a change, and what Alan was talking about, where if an operation has gotten to the point that the bank is saying, we need to make a change, we need to do things differently, we're going to call in this loan early. More than likely, that operation knows it's coming. It's not going to be a big surprise. But, Davis, when the industry is coming off of really good years in 2022 and 2023, and now all of a sudden they're looking at 2024 and understanding what kind of a drain it might be on their working capital, all of a sudden some of these issues on the financial well-being, the financial stress of those operations, it took a while to develop, but it still is there in a heartbeat in the big picture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the issue in what is making this downturn a little more difficult for some, not all, for some to manage.
And if I might ask, we've been pretty general about financial conditions coming out of 22 and 23. I would imagine it's highly possible that there's someone listening to us right now screaming at the radio, 22 and 23 were not that great for me.
Oh, yeah.
Is that possible?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Go out west, Western Corn Belt, that where drought conditions existed in both 2022 and 2023. Yep. And there are some producers in my backyard here in Northeast Iowa that did not have great crops in 2023, but the difference was the price. And the way that the price has changed has really the stress on some producers out there. I'd like to think that we can find demand, to build us out of it. And one of those areas of demand is obviously going to come from the biofuels industry. Chris Bliley, Senior VP of Regulatory Affairs at Growth Energy, is our guest right now. Hey, Chris, it's good to talk with you again. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing, Chip?
Doing all right. Now, I have said that we are going to stay on this issue and do our part to make it a front burner issue. This issue is the 40B and the 45Z tax credits on the production of sustainable aviation fuel. First things first, remind us again what those credits are and how they are implemented.
Yeah, good segue. So these credits were put in to incentivize sustainable biofuel production. And so the 40B was specific to sustainable aviation fuel that runs until the end of this year. And we just saw really the first guidance on that earlier this spring. And then 45Z is broader than sustainable aviation fuel. It has a sustainable aviation fuel component as well as for on-road fuel. So things like bioethanol, renewable diesel, biomass-based diesel, biodiesel, as well as sustainable aviation fuel. And then that runs for 3 years. And so what this really does is drive investment in technologies, both at the plant and on the farm, that can reduce greenhouse gas emissions.
Okay. Now, we got the details of what would qualify for 40B credits from the Treasury Department, and the 45Z tax credit qualifications are going to come from the Treasury Department as well. Is that correct?
That's correct. And I think everybody is anxious on 45Z because that credit is set to start at the beginning of 2025.
Yeah.
And, we just saw as you said, the details on 40B. And with 45Z starting on January 1, we have yet to see what the details are. And there was a lot to unpack in 40B. Some things that were positive, the first use of GREET ever in federal tax policy, good things on recognition of low land use change. However, there are a number of things that were really concerning, particularly this bundling of all the climate smart agriculture practices. That's really,
right.
Very problematic. A one size fits all approach just will not work.
Right. And the way things stand right now, I'm not sure that we're going to have. Well, we don't know because we don't know what the qualifying parameters are for 45Z at this point. We don't know how much of this 2024 crop that is being produced right now might actually qualify those ethanol producers for a 45Z credit, correct?
Yeah, I think that's the really important thing to recognize here is that, look, we have to really focus, on developing and making sure that what people are doing is recognized. And so, certainly people made decisions a long while ago for this crop, but to the extent that they did, we want to make sure that they get the right credit. And so if you only did one of these practices, but you had to bundle them all together, that doesn't make sense. So we need to fix that going forward. We also need to make sure that we're capturing everything that people are doing on the farm and at the plant. And so 40B had a pretty limited number of things that would qualify. And so we want to make sure that list is as expansive as possible.
Dealing with the people at the Treasury Department to make them understand that and how, they've got to be educated on the basics of some production agriculture, don't they, Chris?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. I think one of the things that's very encouraging is USDA is very actively engaged. Right now we've got a comment period on their request for information on climate smart agriculture. They've asked a lot of really good questions. It's 26 detailed questions about this. And certainly they've been strong advocates throughout this process both on 40B and looking ahead to 45Z. And so, certainly we, and along with many other stakeholders, are talking to not only Treasury, but, USDA, the Department of Energy, whose labs do this modeling, EPA, and others. But USDA continues to be a strong advocate here. They certainly understand the agriculture side, and I think it's helping them with good data and good information that they can continue to be strong advocates and really push some of these other agencies like Treasury to get the details right.
Okay, what's the next step in this whole process, Chris? What do we need to be watching for, and what can farmers do to make their thoughts known on this?
Well, so right now, USDA has a request for information out right now about climate smart agriculture. People can comment up until July 25th. We will be commenting, as I know a number of stakeholders can, but anybody in the public can do that. Any farmer, any grower, any biofuel producer, or others can do that. I think from there, USDA is going to take that information and use that to help inform things like the 45Z details with Treasury. So I think that's kind of the key next step is how does USDA take this information from stakeholders to help inform that? And I think a lot of focus is going to be on what Treasury puts out on 45Z, whether that's a proposed rule, guidance, or however, our understanding of proposed rule. So people are really anxious that get out soon, but also that they get the details right.
Do you think that the details right is very important? But do you think the people at the Treasury understand how short they are on time to get this decision out?
I think people have been very straightforward with Treasury and others, the importance of the timeliness of this. And I think Treasury understands it, but they're also dealing with a host of other tax provisions that they're trying to do, and they're behind. I mean, just candidly. Okay. And so, I think people are going to continue to push. And people are really anxious because people need to know the details before the year starts.
Yeah. From your perspective, Chris, what's at stake here?
Well, for what's at stake, I think for us as bioethanol producers is that people are making significant investments in technologies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. That's happening at the plant. They're also, we're also having a lot of conversations with growers who are also making investments. And so in order to help finance those investments, it's clear that people need to understand what the true value is and what the value that they might receive in these incentives. And so I think that's what's really key. And I think going forward, it's not just about tax incentives. We've seen a number of policies, state low carbon fuel standards on the West Coast, international low carbon fuel standards, reduction of greenhouse gas emissions and lower carbon intensity biofuels are what is going to allow us to continue to compete in the future going forward. So that's really what's at play here. The ability to compete as bioethanol, the ability to compete as a feedstock for sustainable aviation fuel, and help really drive these markets, not only here in the U.S., but around the world.
All right, Chris, hey, thank you so much. It's important perspective that we need to try to figure out everything that might be happening as we go forward. Chris, thank you.
Yeah, good talking to you.
Good to talk with you as well. That's Chris Bliley, Senior VP Regulatory Affairs at Growth Energy. Davis and I will be right back to wrap up the first hour of AgriTalk.
The chickens have come home to roost. Find out whose fence they're perched on today on AgriTalk.
And welcome back to AgriTalk, everyone. Your pal, Davis Michelson, is here. In fact, it's me. It's me.
It's you.
Chip, am here? Are here.
I am here. You and I are.
Chip is here. Handsome
here.
Newsman also are here. I got a big day today. I can't think straight, Chip.
Why not? What's going on?
I got the Grow Getters podcast. Grow Getters. Don't miss it. We're gonna tape a new episode right after the show today, noon Central.
Okay.
Here's the thing. You know what an earworm is, don't you? An earworm? Like a song you get stuck in your head? Like you get the nah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about
nah.
I thought you were talking about a corn earworm, but
Oh,
okay.
we are on way different pages right now. An earworm. Here's my thought.
Okay.
Today on the podcast, I'll speak with 3 hog producers who have a coffee truck that they take around to different events and things like that.
Yeah.
I'm going to try. And I don't know if this is the case. I don't think they do. I don't think they offer any candied bacon along with their coffee truck.
Oh.
I mean, imagine that. You're at the estates, you're at the machinery auction, and you roll up to this coffee truck, and would you like some candied bacon with that? Yes, please. And so, I'm going to try and earworm them to get candied bacon into that coffee truck. You want to hear how I'm going to do it? It goes like this. Candy bacon coffee truck, 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 candy bacon coffee truck.
Nice. That's
think it'll
very catchy. Yeah.
Candy bacon coffee truck, candy bacon coffee truck, candy bacon coffee truck, candy bacon coffee truck. I think it'll work.
I think it'll work. I think it's definitely in my head. One of the most impressive shops that I've ever been in was on some boardwalk in Southern California, and they were selling bacon by the slice. And I'm like, am I really going to pay $3 for this slice of bacon just so that I can try this piece of maple sugar, whatever, bacon?
Yeah.
Of course I am. Of course I am. And of course I did.
Well, yeah. And I would imagine like 4 slices for $5 maybe? Or maybe 8. Do we want to go $2 a piece on those slices? People are gonna want them. I think they'll pay whatever.
I think that's right. I think that's probably right. Yeah.
Candy bacon coffee truck. I'll let you know how it goes. I'm pretty excited about it.
Good. Yeah. You know, if the idea sticks with these guys, they might have to make you a partner.
One of these days, I'm going to sell a jingle doing one of these grow-getters. I'll tell you what. I'll get it done yet.
Good luck,
I'm
brother.
a professional.
The Dow is 500 points higher.
Yeah.
I mean,
is this a Trump bump? What is this?
It certainly seems to be.
Is it
Dow 500 points higher? S&P up 21. NASDAQ is just slightly higher, up 5 points. But
in Ohio,
huge move in the Dow.
Yeah, and Ohio Senator J.D. Vance. I don't know much about this gentleman, but he's the pick for VP. He's the pick for VP Chip. There we go.
Yes. I think it's a very interesting choice, and it kind of hit me why they made this choice last night as I was watching everything, and some of the speakers at the Republican National Convention rolled through, and there was a message that was building, and that message is, I used to think this about Trump, but I've, quote unquote, seen the light, and now I am a supporter of former President Trump. He needs to be our president again. J.D. Vance was a never-Trumper. It's self-proclaimed never-Trumper. He said some very nasty things about President Trump back in 2016. I'm telling you that I think what they are now hoping is that at every turn, mainstream media is going to attempt another gotcha moment with a flashback at something that J.D. Vance said negatively about, at the time, candidate Trump in 2016, so that J.D. Vance can say, yeah, I said that. There's no question that I said that because I was lied to, because they convinced me, because I had not yet seen the light. Now I've seen the light. Look at the policies that are in place. They make sense. I'm a believer.
Mm-hmm.
So in other words, if I changed my mind on Trump, you can too.
Yeah.
That's the whole reason for J.D. Vance, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and not only that, I had in the news here a little bit earlier. I don't think I've made it to this part, but he's introduced various legislation targeting the financial services industry, including a proposal with Massachusetts Democrat Senator Elizabeth Warren.
Right.
Here's some bipartisanship right here. Working with Elizabeth Warren, for crying out loud.
I think what you're hearing there is what might describe as he has been described, a new age populist.
Yeah.
Looking for some rules and regulations that support domestic production at the expense of global relationships. Okay? And
all right, I can see that.
looking at new ways of making it happen. And I think that is probably part of the definition, and I think it is probably part of why at some point Vance and Warren could agree on a piece of legislation. I don't know if they would today or not. But this message of I changed my mind, I changed my beliefs, and now I am a supporter of Trump. I think that's going to be the overriding message.
I like that.
It'll be interesting. All right, thank you for listening this morning. Come back this afternoon. Craig Van Dyke, Keystone Co-op. Davis, come back for that. I know you've got you've got the Grow-Getters to record at noon, but hopefully you can make some time to come back this afternoon, too.
I'll carve out a moment. Sure.
Excellent. 206 Central.